Good morning, sunshine. It's a beautiful day to quilt. Actually, every day is a beautiful day to quilt, right? Of course. So the topic that I decided on for today is tips for micro quilting and what actually is micro quilting. That'll be our first discussion, but I've got a couple of items. What really makes micro quilting shine, in my opinion, is a very thin thread. The idea is that you're quilting very tiny, and your stitches are going to be tiny if you're micro quilting, like 14, 15 stitches per inch, something like that. Really, really small. And you need to not be afraid of that. So I'm going to try and show you this sample. Let's see how well it shows up there. Can you see that? That's pretty tiny. There's a lot of stitches in there, and that is really, really close together. So you have to move. That's really the key with micro quilting. If you're hesitating, that is going to show more than if you take stitches on top of one another. And the way that you can help hide, any imperfections with this type of style is two things. You have to choose a fine thread, because if you have a 40 weight thread right here, it's going to bulk up really fast if you're stitching on top of yourself. So you really want to make sure that your thread can tolerate being stitched on top of. And one of the ways we do that is we choose a very fine thread. So I'm going to show you a little sample that I just did this morning that I was testing my tension. So this is a 100 weight thread, right? And yeah, you can see I got wiggles, I was getting the woolies out this morning. And this thread can take it. It can take that. If you stitch over this couple times, nobody can tell. Nobody cares. I'll just put it down because, you're not going to look at it like micro like that. Nobody's going to do that. Right? So let's just scoot it a little bit away. So this is me just sitting in my chair and looking at it from about, 1.5 feet, 18 inches, computer screen distance away. That looks awesome, don't you think? If there's little imperfections, nobody's going to tell. Now, the other thing that would hide this even better, of course, is less contrast. So on here, this blue obviously is a very strong contrast on this dark fabric. It really does show. And, we'd usually choose that in our lives because we want you to see what we're doing. So if we choose something that is black on black, well, that's pretty hard to see what the instructor's doing and makes it kind of useless. So when you're practicing, it's okay for you to choose a high contrast thread. Use some scrappy thing that you have left over. So, this is a piece I had from a class, and I can throw that up there and I can just quilt the tar out of it and fill it in. Or, if I have some just pieces of scrap that are left over from some quilt that I don't really feel like I can use it, like if you've cut the edges of your quilt and you've got some batted areas left, just put a top fabric on that piece of batting and backing and just quilt the tar out of it. And that's a really great, inexpensive way to practice this skill. So I want to introduce the threads really quickly. There are more. I'm not, paid by any of these people to speak about their threads. These are threads that I just use because I like them, number one, and because I have access to them, number two. So access is really important. It's about what you can find where you are. This one is kimono silk. So this is 100 weight silk, and this thread is more expensive. It's usually sold in these smaller cones. You can get a little bit of a mini cone for them, but definitely going to be pricier because the fiber itself is a natural fiber. It receives dye really well. It is very strong, and it's really shiny, and it's going to hide the best of all of these. It just will sink right down into the fabric. It's going to meld right into the fabric. And you can kind of tell that by, look at how it just lays so nicely, right? It just lays on there flat. It just sinks right into whatever contour there is. So let's pull this one out. This one is also 100 weight. I'm just going to kind of cut off a piece of it here. And notice that this one seems maybe just a little bit wiry. It doesn't have quite the drape. It's not just going to conform and lay down as well as the silk will. This is polyester. This is Invisifill. It's by Wonderfill. And let me show you how fine it is. Look at that. Can you see that? Super fine. Love it. It's awesome. Okay, so I use that a lot. They have a lot of pre-wounds, and they have a lot of different colors, and they're nowhere near as expensive as silk. So really great threads, and they do have them in larger cones that are kind of like this size. So you can definitely have a lot of choices as far as colors with Wonderfill, with the Invisifill. So this one is a little bit newer to the market. If you're a cotton purist, this is an 80 weight thread, and this is cotton, and this is from Aurifil company. So you can see it has a little bit more body than the silk, you know, or the Invisifill. I mean, it even looks, just the presence is a little bit more, but it's still very fine, and that would work really well. So going to be obviously a little more linty than a polyester. The silk is not very linty, surprisingly, but the cotton always is, and the polyester isn't. So just looking at these, you can see kind of how their presence is different. So there's the cotton right there. And then let's pull up one more. So I said that the Aurifil was 80 weight, and this is Deco Bob. This is by Wonderfill, and this is kind of has like a cottonized texture on it, and it's 80 weight. So just between these two 100 weights right here and these two, you can already see a little difference in the thickness and the texture. And then let's pull this Microquilter out too, so you can see that. Oh, it's not open, and it's not easy to open. All right, and this one is very fine also, because this is that 100 weight. And this is probably, in my opinion, looks or perceives to be the thinnest of all of the ones. Even though they're supposedly the same weight, I do feel like they kind of have their own looks, each of them. So, you know, you get to play. You get to decide. Look how fine that is. Woo. Here we go. Right there. Super fine. Love it. So these type of threads can take it if you're sewing over the same area 3-4 times. It's okay. It's still going to look good. And that lets you add more definition. It lets you color in things like scribble quilting or something like that with these threads. So the other tip I'm going to give you, I'm going to just take these off. I'm already threaded up, and I have Invisifill in my sewing machine right now. So I'll just move these over. And I do have the blue in, and we're going to sew on pink, this pink. So it'll be a little less contrasty, but you'll still be able to see it. And we're just going to put some random fills in this little clamshell area for you. Let's make sure looks like I'm trapped a little bit. There we go. All right. So one of the first tips that I'll show you is with a narrow thread like this, it's great if you put a secondary line on the outside of your quilting. So that's the first technique that we're going to share. So if this is the curvature, let's turn it a little so it's closer to you. Let's get you in a little more. What we'll do is we're just going to freehand stitch right on the inside of this clamshell. And it's okay if it's not perfect, don't worry, it's fine. So we're about 1/8 of an inch away, and just slowly make your way along. Oh, I had a little bunky there, but good enough. So here you can see if we put a secondary line, this thread isn't that visible, but what it can do is it creates more definition because this gets compressed as a thicker line with those two lines close together. It's going to give you a little bit more of a 3D flattening. So we can even fill that in. If we wanted to, we could go back. Let's go ahead and we'll just fill it in because we can. So this is what we were talking about, where you can put successive layers of thread in there. And now we've got a little bit of a texture there. Okay, and then let's play. We'll use this and we'll fill this one and make our way back to there. So this will be some traveling also. So let's just come up and follow the arc. And then we'll just come up a little bit and put some little fan lobes in there. Kind of follow the curve. Sort of put one little teardrop in the middle. And then on this side, I'll come out first. Okay, now you can see it, but it's not jumping out at you. It's not, you know, huge or anything like that, but you get that little bit of texture. And we have a lot of stitching right there, but it's okay. It's not really, you know, bold. It's not in your face. So here, let's just do some micro quilting. And what this will be is just simple, very small stippling. The technique for small stippling with this micro thread is you cannot slow down. So what you want to do is set the speed of your machine and keep the speed the same. Here's what happens. Let me see if I can draw it for us real quick. Let me get a little marker. When you were a little kid, right, if you had a shape and it was a dot to dot, and sometimes the dots are kind of like far apart. Well, if I go line to line to line with those dots, right, it's going to be very boxy right there. But if I have a lot more dots and I go line to line to line to line to line, well then look, it's like a curve. So what happens when we micro quilt, the more dots that we have, the more curvy it's going to look. So that's really the key of going ahead and putting more of those dots in. So keep your speed even and just move little movements. You're using your fingertips here. Okay, my arms are not even lifting off of the table. I'm looking inside the little hole and I'm kind of coming back. So I'll fill out a little bit here and then I'll come back and I'll fill this edge in. And then I'll travel out a little bit here and I'll fill back to this corner. So here's what we got for that, just to show you. Okay, and you can see really soft, punches this down really well, gives that texture to this area. So if I'm going to fill this, I would maybe want some openness out here. So whenever you are making an effort to fill something and compress it down, the only way that that matters if you have some area next to it that isn't compressed. So it's not worth doing all of this work if you're not going to have different layers of texture, because then it just smashes it and then you don't get any of the power of your batting, right? So always think about when you're doing a compression like this, somewhere right next to it, you got to have the lift in order for it to show and to jump out. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's do a little ruffle. We'll do some mini clamshells right here. Okay, and here we're going to travel up inside the clamshell a little bit, and then we'll start the next one. And I'm just looking to hit the bumps on the middle, and then I can travel up right inside this white seam line. Because my thread is very fine, nobody can see it. Okay, so now I've done my little clamshells in there. And now I'm kind of in Never Never Land, right? You know, I'm kind of in the middle of the design. So I got to get somewhere. I got to get over so I can stitch right along my existing stitch line right on the inside and get to my new spot. And right there where I traveled, let's see if we can get you in a little closer. Get you down so you can look at that. So what you're looking at is right there. I stitch with the blue right along that stitch line, but you can barely see it, right? Because it's very fine thread, and that white thread, this is 40 weight, that is the grayish or white on the top. And so that's how you can go ahead and make sure that you're traveling across that. Let's make sure I guess there I couldn't focus on you. Right? So as we travel down here, we let the white stay and we stitched right inside. And this type of traveling is really, really great practice for you, because then you can overstitch areas and practice following the line, but you can do it with a really low contrast thread. And even if you just wanted to come in with a dark matching thread right here, you could just practice following this line freehand, and that is a great training aid for you. So let's go ahead, let's put some in. We'll show you that textural difference that we were just talking about. We'll just put a little S curve in, and here we'll just follow it back a little bit, and we'll just do one more. And what that does is that gets us to the other side. Anytime you do the odd number, it brings you back. So there you go. This way we've compressed this center, and we've got this area on both sides for the lift. And I can even come back in, and as we did before, we followed that curve and we put a secondary line of stitching right on the inside. And that's going to punch that area down just a little bit and make sure that it stays down. So that'll help give us that more three-dimensional element right there. Having this little extra line in there, you can see that now this little pillow is really defined right there, and this one too. If we did it on the bottom here as well, it would punch this pillow up even more because it would really recess that line right there. All right, sorry, I'm making you dizzy. All right, so let's do, let's see, we'll do those little wishbone bubbles or whatever you call them. And here we'll kind of stitch over a little bit. The one before we'll kind of make our loops wrap over. So here I'm cutting into the one before. That way if I mess up, nobody can tell, right? And now we're down to the bottom. So there you go, you got your little ribbon. And this is so flexible, this little guy, when you stitch over like that, because then if you mess up, nobody can tell. Because I mess up a lot. All right, let's put one more in. We have one more. And let's show you just some like little spirals. We'll do spirals and then maybe open circles in here, because you can really do great with little double circles on this with this thread, because you can make really small little pebbles in here. And then we'll just echo out, put our spiral in. Go around extra times, it's okay, nobody cares. This thread is so fine, it can take it. And then we'll just echo. So it's good if we can leave some open periodically, and that'll help with that texture. That'll make it so that not everything is just smush, smush, smush. So put an open one in there, go around 2 times, and we'll just echo that and kind of fill that in because we don't have a lot of room left. Di Werner, I love that you say they don't look messy. That's because you're not looking close enough, and nobody ever does anyway, so don't worry about it. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll chop this. I don't have a lot of time because I have to go meet the builder at our house, which is being built. So it's been a little adventure doing that during COVID, but they are doing a great job. I have nothing bad to say, but it's just really challenging. I see all the difficulties both for all of the people working and, you know, still trying to maintain their jobs and trying to be safe and everything else. Super challenging for all of those guys. So I give them a shout out. All right, so because this is so small, we're just going to let you see it up close because we can't show you far away. So that's one. And you can see like it's wiggly. It's kind of scribbly, but it looks like a blustery day. I'm going with that. I'm keeping that. So there's the overlapping little buns. And you know, you can see right there. It's not perfect. I don't care. I think it looks awesome. I love the texture. And this is what we were saying right here. When you stitch this part, we stitch that 2 times. Look at, you can even see the little puff right there because we now have really highlighted that. We've closed this with more stitching so none of that batting can really stay up. That's what creates this pillow impact. I can even just feel that texture there. And you can see it here, but if we stitched the bottom, we'd get even more of that. And then there's our little clamshells right there. There's the wiggle, and there's our fan. And then there's just a couple of extra lines of stitching. And I wouldn't hesitate to go and fill that in some more because I think it would be fine. I would think it would look great. So we haven't done a million different things, but if you have never played with a micro quilting thread, I really encourage you to do it. It does step your quilting up a big level, and it allows you to do those layers of quilting. And the way that you would do it is you're going to do all of the big stuff first with the big thread, the big outline. This is like when you take your coloring page and you outline with the crayon, and then this is like coloring it in, filling it in with the color. So you can do this, you know, high contrast or low contrast or no contrast, it's up to you. But the no contrast is definitely going to hide, and a low contrast is just going to give more of a little bit of an impression of texture, whereas, you know, here we can really see all of that detail there. So one last tip, if you're using a micro quilter thread and you're having trouble with your thread, make sure that the thread is running the way that it is supposed to. And I'll give you an example. Here, let's move our camera up here. Dun, dun, dun. You can see a little bit of my messy sewing room. Okay, right there, right? So this is on a horizontal spool. I have the correct cap size, and my thread is pulling off under here, pulling out from the bottom this way, and it's threaded properly. And then if you're using something like this, one of these big spools like this, that kind of thing, this is on a thread stand. Now, some people have that on their machine, and some people have to have one off of their machine. It depends what you have. But a large cone like this, you should be pulling it up from the top like this. So it should be on a vertical spool stand. Okay, if you're using a mini cone, like if it looks kind of like this, and it has a big opening like this, you can run this vertical where it comes up like this. It's definitely made to go like that. If you're using it like this, then you need a special spool cap, and I'm going to show you mine. Let me grab it here. It looks like this. Okay, and it's going to go into the cap like that when you put it on. And what that does is no thread then gets caught. If I were to use this kind of a cap, I'll show you. If I use this kind of a cap on here, that thread gets caught right under there. And that is going to cause breakage, shredding, tension problems, maybe even a broken needle. So don't use this for these things. Either run it this way, or if you're going to run it vertical, horizontal, put it on like that. Use the special spool cap like that. Okay, so make sure that you're running it the way that it will work best for that thread, because it is such a fine thread. You definitely want to take that extra step and make sure it's going to be on there correctly. And then the last thing is, if you're having trouble with your thread, make sure you're using the right size needle. So we have lots of different needles. I would still use a quilting needle. That's my favorite, or a top stitch needle. But you want to change perhaps the size of it. And first I would start with 80, like a 80 size like that for these fine threads. And if it's still misbehaving and you can't really adjust the tension, you might even try going down to a 70, because you're matching the top thread, not the bobbin. You want to match your top thread to get the right needle. Cindy, those special spool caps no, they're not a Janome exclusive, Susan. I'll answer your question too. Those special spool caps are available for most manufacturers. So obviously my machine that I use today is Baby Lock. I have Janome. I know Bernina has it. I've seen it on a FAF. I know that Brother has it. So definitely look inside your kit. You know, I'll tell you the truth. I went to a show one time and I was with an educator. And I'll even say it's a Janome educator, and I was having trouble with my thread, and she's like, "Oh, you have the wrong spool cap on." I was like, "I do?" I had my Bernina for like 17 years, and I had never used that spool cap one single time. And now it's never put away. It's always out because I have so many of these kind of cones. So that's awesome. Once you start using that, you will never go back. They are completely terrific. Okay, you guys, so it's time for me to scoot, but I hope that you found today interesting, and I would love, love, love it if you would share it with me if you try it on a little scrap or whatever. So just send me a picture because like I said, I'm nosy. I want to see what we're doing. So have a great day, and if you are a ruler person, then I will see you on Sunday. Again, I don't know what I'm doing. I do work so much during the week, and then I usually on Saturday am planning my designs. So Connie, I got your angel. It's beautiful. So I have posted you already, and I hope you know that I got your angel. And so anyway, thank you guys for being here, and I will see you later. Have a wonderful day. Happy quilting. Bye. I'm hanging up.